Welcome to Beneath the Suit. I'm Gerson Pancorbo, your host. I'm the Communication Director for ORCM and RCRP. At this point, you already know that Beneath the Suit try to provide a deeper and more personal perspective in important individuals in our church. While we often know them as a presidents or directors, we want to shed a little light in their lives so we can learn from their values and experiences. We want to provide an understanding of who they are beyond their professional personas. Today, I'm really happy to be here with Dr. Michael K. Owusu, President of the Southeastern Conference. Welcome, President.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, because we are in your home. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you. And thank you in advance for all the knowledge that we're gonna get from you. What I do always is, because I'm a millennial, I Google your name and I try to find information of the person that I'm gonna interview. But you know what? Not always is true. And some numbers are really old. So I'm gonna ask you some things and you tell me if they're true or not, and you update the information.
No problem.
Okay, it says that you are a native of Ghana.
That's correct.
Okay.
I was born and raised in Ghana.
And you spent 26 of your 31st year in pastoral ministry with the Southeastern Conference?
Actually, it's now 28 out of 33. So I've been here 28 years.
33.
I've been with the conference 28 years, but 33 years combined in ministry.
Wow. You become the executive secretary of this conference in 2016?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And president in November of 2020.
That's correct.
Okay.
November 2020.
So it says that you've worked in the public and private sector. You haven't been always a pastor. You were a teacher?
Yeah, well, actually, I did ministry all along, but prior to starting working with the conference, when I moved here to the United States, after I graduated from seminary, I spent some time in the private and the public sector before starting here at Southeastern Conference. Yeah.
It says 4 years in the library system?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
I work in the public library system as a librarian assistant. Yeah.
And 7 years in higher education?
Yes, 7 years at a college in an advice and as an academic advising specialist. I spent 7 years with the young people, just guiding them through their coursework and trying to set their career path. So we probably need to update this number. It says you've been married for 29 years. It'll be 31 years.
31 years.
This year was 31.
To his best friend, Brenda Owusu.
That's right.
She's an university assistant professor and dual board certified adult and family nurse practitioner.
Yeah, that's correct.
And
yes.
God has blessed your family with one adult son.
One adult son.
Okay. Okay. So let's dive into your life. Let's ask you questions like, could you share briefly your journey that led you to become the president of the Southeastern Conference?
Oh, okay, well, that's a good question. That's a long journey. I guess it would be more probably my journey into pastoral ministry. And I think from very early as a child, I knew I was going to be a minister. I knew that, did I want to become a pastor? Probably not. I always wanted to be a doctor, but when I was born, it's a common practice in my country, and especially among the Akan people, our group in Ghana, that your parents usually give you a name, of one of your ancestors, usually a grandparent, a granduncle. And so it so happened that when I was born, I was given the name of my father's uncle, his father's younger brother, who raised him. And who was an Adventist teacher and then later became a pastor, becoming one of the very first Ghanaian pastors after the missionaries left. He was one of the first. So I was given his name. AJ is one of my middle names. So growing up, my dad always, the nickname that he had for me was Osofu, which meant pastor. So from a child,
even from
I've been called a pastor, but I always wanted to be a doctor. It just didn't pan out when I went to high school. Science and math were not my strengths. No. And so I knew that all along God had, a calling in my life to be a pastor. So that's how the journey began. I pastored. I had no aspirations for conference leadership, but it just so happened that that's how God has led my path. And my philosophy is I go only where God leads me to go. And in this time of my life, this is where He's led me. And so this is where I am now.
Wow. Being a president, it's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of it has a high toll on your life. What's the driving force behind your commitment to your role?
Yeah. Okay, so it's pretty much a commitment to God and the calling that He's placed upon my life. He's called me and He's seen it fit to entrust me with this awesome responsibility of leading His people here in Southeastern Conference. So first and foremost, it's a commitment to God to try to make sure that I do the very best so that God can be proud of me because He's the one who has placed me in this role. So that's the driving force, to make sure that I live up to the call and the responsibility that God has entrusted to me.
Wow, that's great. Pastor, for someone that doesn't know, could you describe the primary responsibility that come with being a president of a conference?
Okay. It is wide and varied, but to put it probably
just some of them.
Very,
I know it's going to be a long
simply,
list.
The president is mainly responsible for casting the vision of the organization and being able to communicate that clearly, and then trying to motivate the organization into action in fulfilling the mission of the organization. So to put it, simply, that it encapsulates what the president does. You are responsible to make sure that the organization is fulfilling its mission, the strategic planning, make sure that it's in place, and motivating
that's a good
others
part.
to be able to embrace the mission and be able to fulfill that mission.
Wow, that's great. Can you walk us through a typical day of work from the moment that you step into the office until you leave?
Great. A typical day of work for a president, I think, changes
It doesn't
from
exist,
day
right?
to day. It doesn't exist. There's no one script that when you come in. Some positions when you come in, there are certain things that you do every time. But some of the days, just give you an example, they come in. If we get here sometimes on time for our worship service, we start with worship. Once worship is done, the work begins. Usually we check to see what appointments I may have for that day. There are a lot of meetings that we tend to go through, so we go through those appointments. There are times that may be meeting with the administrative team. There are times that I have meeting with individual directors, and then also meetings with the pastors, teachers, other members who may come in, and also responding to emails and messages that have been left. So a day can be hectic, but there are a lot of meetings that we usually have to go through.
So that sounds like a lot of work. How do you maintain a balance between your work and your personal life?
Yeah, you have to be intentional. I have to be honest, it's not always that happens. Unfortunately, there are times that you find yourself going home and taking work with you at home. So I have to be very intentional to try to compartmentalize and to know it's work and be able to take some time for yourself. So I try to separate work from life. Okay. It's hard to do sometimes, but there are times that I have to just make sure that I have time for myself, health-wise, as well as being able to do some other things outside of work, just to be able to maintain that balance.
What makes Dr. Owusu happy these days?
Man, what makes me happy these days?
In work, in life, what makes you happy?
Two things. What makes me happy is just the fact that God had seen it fit to entrust me with this awesome responsibility to lead His people. That brings me joy. A sense of happiness and joy for me is my family, my wife, who is my great support. It's been there all the time, my encourager, and my son, and now also the new joy in our life, our granddaughter. So I find joy in my family, and in the fact that God has allowed me to be a part of this great work of saving souls and give me this responsibility of leading this work in this part of the vineyard.
You mentioned grandparenting, so there's something that you've done for the first time lately?
First time, yeah. And it's fun. It's interesting. Adorable baby, Grace.
Let's go to your office for a moment. What's one thing besides the Bible we understand that you always need to have in your office? One item.
One item, yeah. Well, I guess the one item, that's a little interesting. I have different stuff in my office, but one item, and I guess it's a part of me now. My laptop is always it's always in my tablet. My tablet particularly goes everywhere here in the office, because I have a lot of stuff in there, notes, different things that I have always with me. But there's one book that I carry with me by Ellen White. It's a book on character development. It's excerpts from some of her books, and Character Under Construction, I think it's called. So I usually just have that with me all the time. I read from that from time to time.
Nice. So Dr. Owusu, what's your favorite Bible character?
Oh, favorite Bible character? I have several. It's gonna be hard. I think different times, you know, at different points in life, you know. So Moses has always been one character that I was looked up to as an interesting, because of the responsibility that he had in leading God's people, the challenges that he had to go through, and yet being able to be humble about it, and to be able to lead the people of God. But quite of late, I think the character that I found inspiration from is Joseph, and his life experiences and how God led his life providentially. And when I look at Joseph, I see how God has providentially guided my life, you know, from all the way from Ghana here to the United States to Southeastern Conference to be a president, and so I find inspiration from the life of Joseph. Yeah.
So the follow-up question will be, what's your favorite book of the Bible?
Favorite book of the Bible? It's always been the Gospel of Mark. I just love the Gospel of Mark.
The way that Mark describes Jesus and the life of Jesus.
Yeah. The way that it describes, and it's moving. It's always kind of moving. Something is happening all the time, and it's just, you know, Mark does not spend a lot of time in trying to trace the genealogy of Jesus. He just goes straight into what Jesus was doing, how he was impacting the lives of people, and change that he was making the lives of people. So Mark always speaks to me.
So what's for Dr. Owusu the best quality for a pastor, in a pastor?
Okay. Best quality in a pastor. I'll use what I've used as my philosophy to guide me as a pastor. Qualities that I think are essential: humility, integrity, authenticity.
Wow.
And those are three things that for me,
they're hard to find.
That are very important. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. You will use the same for a departmental director?
Yeah, those will be critical things. I think for leadership as a whole.
Okay.
Those are three key things, because, and especially when it comes to the church. The reason I talk about humility, we are servant leaders. We're called to serve people. Our titles do not shape who we are. It is a service that we give that shapes who we are. And the service is not necessary just unto man, but really unto God. And God has called us to serve. And so humility is part of integrity. It's the fact that we need to be trustworthy. We need to lead with integrity so people can trust our leadership and be able to follow our leadership. And authenticity, we have to be ourselves. We have to be who God has called us to be. People have to see us as being real, as being empathetic, as being caring. They have to see our heart, so to speak. And I think those are critical elements that every leader needs to have.
Which sermon has impacted you the most?
Which sermon has impacted you the most? Yeah.
Because you've done a lot.
I've done a lot of sermons.
You've heard a lot, so which one has a special place in your heart?
There are two. There was one sermon that I've entitled, Does He Know You? And it's based on Matthew chapter 7, verse 21, thereabout. You know, when it talks about, you know, people at the end, people would talk about all that they've done. Have we not prophesied in your name? Have we not cast out demons in your name? And Jesus said, I never knew you. And so to me, that has become very important, knowing Jesus Christ. Because from that passage, at the end of the day, when Christ comes, he comes for those who knows him, those whose life have been transformed to his image and likeness, those who have a relationship with him. So that is a sermon that has impacted. And the other one is what I call But God, coming from the experience of Joseph again, Genesis chapter 50. You know, when he finally meets his brothers after they sold him into slavery for almost 20 years or so. They meet him and say, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. And I've seen that in my life, in my personal life, how God has used different adversities and different challenges that I've gone through, ultimately to accomplish his purpose in my life. So those two sermons have been the ones.
Wow. Pastor, what's the most important thing that you learned about church work during your time in the church?
Most important thing I've learned about church work. I'm just trying to think in terms of what you mean by in terms of church work as it's broad. So I'm trying to get there.
As the work ethic, and how something that we can learn from your experience working on the church, like to be, as you said, truthful and to be transparent, to be honest. What's something that during these years of ministry, a lot of years, that you've learned that you want to share about ministry?
Sure. I think for me, again, those three things that I mentioned: humility, integrity, authenticity in particular. And both my wife and I, we've made it a point throughout our ministry, wherever we are, that we are natural. When we go to a church, we are part of the church. The church is our family. And we don't see ourselves as being a pastor. We are there. So we are with the church. If it's about doing some work in the church, we are there. If it's about going to Pathfinder Camporee and sleeping in the tents with the young people, we are there. And so to me, that is something that I think it's key. That is what has shaped my ministry. I think when you're authentic with people and people get to see your heart and that you care about it, that makes a big difference in the lives of people.
That's true, Pastor. What's one of your favorite memories of when you were a pastor of a church?
Favorite memories, pastor of a church. I could probably pull out a lot of memories, but I think one of the favorite memories would be being with the young people. Well, I spent 10 years in Tallahassee, and Tallahassee is it's a university town. There are two major universities over there and a large community college. So one of the favorite memories is on Sabbath afternoons, having the young people, the college students at our home. My wife loves to cook, so she cook a lot. On any beginning Sabbath, we could have maybe as many as 15, 20, sometimes 30 young people in our home, and just being able to interact with the young people, having a good time. I remember one of the fondest memories there in Tallahassee is watching the Summer Olympic Games in China. So we opened up our homes and all the young people came over there. There are a number of people were from Jamaica, so that's when it was same boat. So just spending time with young people is just one of the fondest things I'll remember from my memory, and it's refreshing and heartwarming when years later some of those young people will come and say, "You don't remember me, do you? No, who are you? No, we used to come to your house on Sabbath when we were in college," and that's my heart good. Yeah.
Did anything intimidate you about your first church assignment when they told that young Dr. Owusu, "This is your church"? For the first time?
Not really. The first assignment was more of an assistant youth pastor, an assistant just helping another person. It was not very intimidating. It just had to
the way was already paved. You already
yes,
knew where
I just
you were
followed that.
into.
But in terms of being on my own, it was not intimidating because that was the church that I started along with my wife and two other couple that we started organically from the ground up. So we pretty much did. So the church was not there. We built the church. So so it was not like going in, there was something to intimidate. So yeah, I think that prepared me for going into other church situations. Yeah.
So there's any advice that you will give to someone that want to be a pastor?
Okay. So advice that I would give to one who would be a pastor, number one, to make sure that you know Jesus for yourself. That you know Jesus for yourself, and that your life has been impacted in him, and you have experienced his transforming power. Because we cannot show Jesus unless we've experienced Jesus. We cannot show the way unless we know the way. So we have to make sure that we ourselves, we have that personal, intimate relationship with Jesus Christ, and then to submit to his leadership. Allow him to lead and to guide our lives, not to run ahead of him, but allow him to lead and to guide your life. And with that, I think you'll be successful in ministry.
That's a great advice. Can we know a little more about Dr. Owusu? What's your favorite food?
Favorite food, that's going to be a challenge. It varies. I have a lot of different tastes. Probably what we call jollof rice from Ghana. It's a special rice dish that is done with tomatoes and seasonings, and it's kind of, mixed up. So that would probably one of the favorite meals that I have.
And your favorite ice cream flavor?
Favorite ice cream flavor? I'm not a big fan of ice cream, but
Dessert.
Yeah,
Your
but,
favorite dessert?
probably ice cream flavor would be like usually it's vanilla pecan or pistachio.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's it.
Who's your favorite person in the world to FaceTime and why?
FaceTime? I don't do FaceTime.
Oh, well, that's a good, okay.
I don't do FaceTime. If the favorite person to FaceTime, it would be my wife.
Okay.
we
But
talk.
you don't use it?
Pardon me? No.
You don't use FaceTime?
I don't do FaceTime.
Okay.
I'm not an Apple. I'm not an Apple kind of guy. Android,
So,
Samsung.
okay, perfect.
but probably with my wife, we would talk most of the time, and then then expressing from my father. Yeah.
So who was the first person you called when they gave you the president's position, and what did you say to them?
It was my wife. She was right. I called her and said, I've been asked to serve. What do you think about this? And she says, I think God has prepared you for this. Wow. And all the experiences that you've gone through.
So he had your back from the beginning.
Yes, she said, I believe you can do this, and God has called you to do this.
Wow. So, Dr. Owusu, what's your favorite sport?
Basketball.
Basketball?
Well, basketball, and I should say basketball. It's really, what do we say in Ghana? Football, soccer.
Soccer.
And then because I live in the United States, basketball. Basketball is it.
Okay,
yeah.
What's your favorite way to spend a free day, if you have any ever?
Oh, free day. Usually just relaxing, going for a walk, and travel. Just traveling to places that have not been before, and just getting away from my regular environment, and just going away, somewhere different, and just be able to just relax.
We can say safely that you've done dozens and hundreds of sermons, right? What was the hardest to preach?
Hardest to preach. Trying to think about that.
A wedding, a funeral? Or...
Yeah. I think funerals are usually more hard to preach. There have been some funerals that were tough. I had to do one recently. My wife's uncle passed away at the end of July, and we had a memorial service here in Orlando. I mean in Miami, and I was scheduled to speak for that. That was a tough one, it was sudden, but he had been with us. My wife was helping, trying to manage his care, and when he passed away, so. It was tough. I didn't really make it through. Someone, actually, Pastor Francois stepped in and did the message for me that way, but that was a difficult one to do. Yeah.
What's one thing do you wish you knew before getting married?
Before getting married, we knew each other for about, we knew each other for about 6 years. So we got to know each other quite well. We read a lot of books. Preparing for marriage, so there were not a lot of surprises. But I think maybe one thing would be the cultural difference.
Okay.
So that we have, because my wife was born and raised in the Bahamas. I was born and raised in Ghana. At the initial stages, there had to be some adjustments, there. So the cultural differences that come. Of course, men and women are different. Of course. So you had to adjust to that. But some of the cultural differences, things that may take for granted, that so those are some things that were quite different, and so that probably was one of the biggest things I had to.
So you said already that Sister Owusu is a really good cook.
Oh yeah.
Who cooks more, her or you?
Oh, she does. She hardly allows me to be in the kitchen. She hardly allows me in the kitchen. She's hands down. She's the best cook, hands down.
Okay. I admit this is a hard question, and maybe we can do it. Can you define in one word fatherhood, or we can do it in one sentence?
Fatherhood. In one word. Awesome responsibility.
So what's the best piece of advice that someone gave you about fatherhood?
Piece of advice that someone gave me about fatherhood. Did anybody give me any advice about fatherhood? I'm trying to think. I don't recall. One of the things that I read, or one of the things that I've shared with people about parenting as a whole, so the best thing that you can do as a parent is to lead your child to know Jesus Christ. Of all the things that you can give to your child, of everything, above everything else that you can do, just to make sure that they know Christ for themselves. So to me, that is one thing about parenting. I think that's our first responsibility, because my son, I believe, is a gift that God gave me, he's God's child first before he's mine. And God has given him a responsibility to shape and to mold his son before he's my son. So that's why I see it's an awesome responsibility. So that's the one thing.
Did become a father change the way that you did ministry?
Oh yeah, it did.
Yeah?
Yeah, it did, because my son became an integral part of our ministry. He's the only son that we had. He did not come along until 5 years later. It took 5 years for us to have him. And growing up, we made a commitment to God that we're going to bring him up in the way that God wants. We believe God has a call in his life. He's special to God, and there's something God wants him to do. So we just want to be able to mold his life. So in my ministry, in the early years when I was a child, I had to let my church understand the commitment that we've made. So we did not leave him with other people, except family. And so there are times that if my wife was not available, I took him to prayer meeting. I took him to board meetings. So sometimes I'd have in my hand whilst I'm leading prayer meeting.
Wow.
I had him in his crib on a chair on the side whilst I'm doing board meeting, and that's how we raised him. So,
as a president, you have a fair share of stress. How you deal with it, Dr. Owusu?
Yeah, try to compartmentalize.
Okay.
Which is the stresses will come. I'm learning to take things one day at a time, one step at a time, and trying to prioritize things and just taking them one at a time. It used to be that I used to get overwhelmed and the timelines, but I'm learning that you just have to deal with things as they come one at a time, and you eventually get there. So yeah, that's how I try to manage it so that it's not too stressful.
In almost 30 years or more than 30 years of ministry, have you seen the ministry change since you started?
Yeah, it has changed. I think there are more demands on pastors.
Oh.
And sometimes some of the demands sometimes are unrealistic. But as a pastor right now, there's so much that a pastor needs to do and needs to know and needs to navigate through. The world has changed and it's become very complex. And so the work of pastors have become very, very complex and very challenging. There's a lot that a pastor have to navigate through and to be aware of. Yeah, so it's changed. Yeah, so it's probably more simpler times, but these are very complex and difficult times. There are a lot of difficult issues that pastors have to grapple with. Yeah.
How would you describe yourself as a kid?
I describe myself as a kid. I was very reserved. Kind of shy, introverted. That's what I was, but very calm. Didn't give much trouble.
What's something though about those years that you like of school and something that you didn't like about the school?
I like school generally. I didn't have no issues about school. I just loved school generally. If there's anything about school that I didn't like, is I didn't like math.
Okay.
Science, yeah. I didn't like science that much, but math was a struggle for me.
Numbers again.
I could do the numbers thing, the arithmetic, things like that, addition stuff. Yeah, but when it came to formulas and algebra and stuff like that, I was like that was like Greek to me, so to speak. Yeah, so that may be the only thing I didn't like about school.
So people see you as a public person, but do you ever have a stage fright? Like
stage, I wouldn't stage fright, but every now and then. There's this feeling of inadequacy, especially when you have to stand up and speak on behalf of God. Because what you say is life unto the person, could be life or death for a person. So there are times that kind of feeling of inadequacy would come over you. That you sense that.
Dr. Owusu, when was the first time that you felt successful and how you define success?
First time I felt successful, I don't think I can pinpoint a moment in time, but for me, success in ministry is being able to make an impact upon the life of people, so that when I go to a church, I measure success by the fact that I left the people better than I found them in their walk with God, that I was able to pour into the lives of people and equip them to be able to use the gift that God has given them to reach out to other people. And if able to see that, then to me that is success.
Wow, that's a great definition, Doctor. Yeah. What advice would you give to your 14-year self?
To my 14-year self, I'm trying to remember what I was like when I was 14. I can hardly, it's so far distant in my mind. 14-year, man. Boy, that's a long time. I can't even remember what I was like. But I don't think really. I was pretty much 14. I was pretty much set and have a sense of where I was going in life. Mm-hmm. I knew I was going to be a pastor. You know, most of my friends were pastors' kids. You know, so I don't think I have any particular advice that I can think about that I give myself 14.
So who would you say was your role model growing up?
Role model growing up. I would say my father. As I look back, I don't think I looked at him per se as a role model.
Right.
My parents at home, both of them, but I think my father more so. But looking back now and looking at certain habits and certain tendencies and characteristics that I have, I recognize that, that's my father. Yeah.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
I stay up late.
Night owl?
I stay up late. I'm trying to go to bed a lot earlier, but I tend to stay up late, work late at night, yeah.
What's something on your bucket list that you hope to accomplish that you can share with us?
Some of my bucket list that I hope to accomplish quite a few things already, thank God. One of the things we love to do, my wife and I, we do is just to travel. Mm-hmm. So one of the things we would like to do is to visit every continent.
Oh. How many do you have left?
Right now, well, we've done Europe, we've done the United States, we've done Asia. Have we done South America? I don't think we've done South America. Come to think about it. I think we've done South America, so that would be, of course, we got to do that. And of course, I grew up in Africa, and we go to Africa every year. So
what's the most adventurous thing that you've ever done?
Walking over a canopy over a rainforest in Ghana. It's called Kakum, and I may be wrong, but maybe it was maybe about 140 feet above the ground. We're up there, and it's a very narrow copy ropes, and the canopy, it's built. They connect this walking path from one tree to the other, and these trees are high up in the air, and you just walk, and it's a narrow, to be wobbling as you walk. So that was one most adventurous thing. I did it with my son, who at that time was, how old was Michael? That was 2004. He was just about 6 years old. Wow. And when we got halfway, I was like, oh my, why did I get on this with this little boy? Because it's kind of scary. They were just wobble, but they have some nets around and they just walk. So yeah, I think that was probably the most adventurous, yeah.
What's your favorite childhood memory? Or your fond?
Favorite childhood memories. That was holidays. Then during holidays, public holidays, my dad had a tradition that he would take us to his favorite spot. It was a beach resort, and we usually would go and spend the day over there. So we go to a place called Buzia Beach, and we just spend the day at the beach all day there, and then we just drive back. Wow. Late in the evening. So that is something that I think all my siblings will remember this up to this day, the times that we spent together as a family.
That's great. So if you could have any animal as a pet, what would it be?
That's a good question. I don't like pets. I don't like animals. Okay. I watch animals, but I've never had a pet.
Okay.
My son has a dog. I had to learn to love that dog, but I've never had a pet. I'm not an animal kind of a guy.
Okay. So let's say that you could have 1 hour conversation with any historical figure, but Jesus, we know for sure. Who will it be?
I think for me it would be Mahatma Gandhi. Yeah, I remember just watching that movie, The Life of Mahatma Gandhi, and it just was amazing that his humility, the simplicity, the depth of love and care that he had for other people, sacrificial life, just giving up the wealth, just to serve his people. That is something I read a book, I watched that movie, and that has always stuck with me, the way that he lived his life. I mean, he was a lawyer. He could have had all that the world has to offer, but he left it all to be able to serve his people and to give his life in serving his people.
So, Dr. Owusu, what was the last thing that made you laugh out loud?
Nothing is coming out to mind right now.
That's fine. Granddaughter, maybe?
Yeah, my granddaughter, last time they were here in July, I think one of the things that made us laugh, she can be sometimes fuzzy and crying, but the moment he said, let's go for a walk, she said, walk, walk, walk. And she is just ready to go walk. It doesn't matter what. She's not happy. Just let's go for a walk, Gracie. And Gracie's just ready to go and just want to walk. Yeah, so that's probably,
Nice. Are you a planner or are you more spontaneous?
I'm more of a planner.
A planner?
I tend to have to plan things out more.
That's a good characteristic for a president.
Yeah, I have to, yeah.
What's the best compliment that you've ever received?
I've received a lot, but sometimes
that's
you
good.
can't remember. But I could probably just share the last one, last weekend, where the marriage retreat, and somebody came to me and he said, I just want to thank you for what you're doing, but you spoil your people. That's what he said. He said, you spoil yourself. So why? I said, because you're taking good care of your people, and that was nice to hear. He used the word spoil your people in a positive sense, that we are trying as an administration to take care of the people that God has entrusted to us. I think that was good to hear that.
Doctor, what's the most beautiful place that you've ever seen?
Hawaii. A beautiful place. Of course, my country of birth has some beautiful sights. And my wife would say probably the Bahamas. The beautiful waters of the Bahamas. She always probably going to say, that probably may be.
So what's your favorite outdoor activity?
It used to be basketball. I've not done that quite well. It used to be basketball and volleyball, but I've hardly done those quite as. So right now, outdoor, maybe just walking. That's about most of what I do. Yeah.
We are down to the last question.
Sure.
So what's the most valuable lesson that you've learned in your life that you want to share with us? What you want to leave the audience with after learning that we learn about Dr. Owusu?
Okay, most valuable lesson. And I think I can draw that from my favorite Bible text. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verses 6 to 8. It says, now godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into this world. And it is certain we're not going to take anything out. And having food and clothing and shelter, rather, having food and shelter, with these we shall be content. Contentment, for me, is how I live my life. Contentment. I'm content with what God has blessed me with. I'm content with how God has led me, and I'm content in following where He's going to lead me. You know, and that's what drives me. That's what's keeping me going.
Dr. Owusu, thank you so much. We know you are a super busy person. You make time for us for this interview. Thank you for all the wisdom that you share with us. And thank you for this last, piece of advice, that contentment. It's gonna stay with me because it was a great piece of advice. Thank you for letting us use your house, for inviting us, and I agree with that member. Thank you so much for the work that you do with the conference.
It's a pleasure. Thank you also.
We're going to have more people, we're going to have more leaders, and we're going to learn a lot more about their lives and their experiences. Thank you so much for being with us. See you next time.
Beneath the Suit, Episode 4, Dr. Michael K. Owusu. Executive producers, Dana C. Edmund and William T. Cox. Director and host, Jerson Pancorbo. Special thanks, Arnaldo Cruz, Margaret Necklace, Yvonne Collins, and the Southeastern Conference. Office for Regional Conference Ministries and Regional Conferences Retirement Plan.